Hello and welcome to the Ugly webinar series, Bold, Honest Thinking for Today's SME Business. So here we are today. With technical, political, economic and social change occurring at an ever faster rate, it's hard to know what the landscape of running a small and medium-sized enterprise will look like in the future. That's why we've created Ugly Webinar Series, to introduce some bold honesty into this conversation. So building on the wisdom and insight of over 60 thriving ugly businesses, we're going to open up the discussion about exactly what's needed to survive and thrive in the new world we enter, and the pitfalls SMEs must avoid at all costs. So today I have here with me Clwyd from Whitehat, who is actually pulling together all our technical excellence of today's webinar, and I have Jake from Connected Set. And before we actually kick off with some questions and answers to our today's questions, I'm going to just show you some lovely information from Connected Set's showreel.
Fantastic, here we go.
Makeup is on fleek, outfits is on fleek.
It has to work and it will work.
I don't like being told what to do.
You asked for it! Ooh!
They're petrified that the next knock at the door is going to be someone telling them we're here to take your kids away.
This is really hard to feel this, but I promise I'll be honest. I could finish my course now, but I might not be around for graduation.
2 years ago, I was diagnosed with stage 3 melanoma, which is the deadliest form of skin cancer.
Oh, savage.
I've always been fascinated by Nazi roleplay.
France is not an Islamic country, it's a Christian country. It should stay like this.
Bra. No.
I'm gonna be smarter than you at Made in Chelsea because I'm on it.
I've put horrible personalities in amazing bodies.
Ooh.
Here's a video I found. Burning my ticket as we speak.
Your lighter flame is a long way away from that ticket.
Stop trying to put us in a box, bro. Stop trying to hold us down.
I'm not going to block them.
Why?
If you're not you, you're lying to yourself.
It's really difficult when your family don't accept what you're doing. You just want them to be proud of you.
Our members are working in dangerous conditions and are humans just like everyone else.
I felt my knees and I could just feel flesh. Mr. Aaron has ruined my life.
Investors have pulled out $5 million. They'll probably pull out another 10.
I pushed myself a little bit harder and I had a cardiac arrest.
If you're not taking risks, you're not having fun.
Wow.
Excellent.
Jake?
So that's the message for the whole webinar series, isn't it? As well? If you're not taking risks, you're not having fun. Thanks very much for asking me on.
Very well.
It's nice to be able to be part of this.
Very exciting to have you here. I'm going to actually challenge you.
Okay.
I want you to talk me through in a bit more detail, but in 20 seconds, give me that elevator pitch. What is it that Connected Set do?
So we're a production company and we specialise in content for young audiences. So we want to produce content wherever those audiences are hanging out. So we're working with broadcasters, but we also work with new platforms. We've produced stuff for Facebook, Snapchat, Instagram, other platforms as well, where those audiences are hanging out. And we are going direct to consumer on YouTube with our YouTube channel, Mashed. So we do comedy and animation, but we also do documentary and factual content too.
Fantastic.
Is that 20 seconds?
Did he do it?
Yeah, it was pretty much
pretty
spot
well.
on.
You did pretty well. Fantastic. It looks amazing. Do you want to just tell us a little bit more about it? Or?
So the Connected Set we set up here basically at Ugly in 2012. It was me and our fellow director Jason Mitchell, and we have one other, Tom Jenkins, who's still with us, and he's heading up Mashed now. So we started in a small room upstairs in Ugly, pitching ideas about convergence of online and TV. Back then, it was a very different marketplace to what it is now. A lot of people weren't that convinced that online was necessarily going to be what it is now in terms of TV content. So we plugged away and kept battling away and got commissions and worked with broadcasters, worked with various different tech platforms as well, and we're still here. We're in a different space in Ugly. We're in a much larger space. We've got about 15 people in our office now on a pretty permanent basis, and we sort of flex up and flex down for different projects. We wouldn't have been able to do that without Ugly. We would have lasted to the end of 2012, and that would have been it. So yeah, so the flexibility and and agility that we've been offered at Ugly has been great, and it's kept us going as a small creative business that we don't have any investment. It's just us and our own, it's very much, we started as a bootstrapped business based on our, either originally we didn't really pay ourselves, like every small business probably, and then started to operate a bit more professionally. But to help us with cash flow and stuff like that, good rents and a good location has helped us, definitely.
Jake, can I actually ask you something on that? Because it's, we do media from a different side, we're doing on the digital side. But the Ugly community here, there's a lot of digital people here. There's a real mix. Have you actually managed to talk to those people? Has it been useful, both within the Ugly community, but also the sort of wider area, the BBC and the feeling that this is a media part of London?
I think the location, both sort of micro, as in what's in the building, and a sort of slightly macro, as in the area, have been really important to us. When we first started, and now we are collaborating with people in the building rather. So we've worked with a number of different people, whether it be sound engineers or web developers or designers, and those kind of things have helped us hugely. Or I'm trying to think, a number of different businesses have been here, small creative businesses have helped, and we've worked together with them on different projects and our location. We've actually won business. BBC R&D are just down the door. I remember this a couple of years ago, they actually physically knocked on our door and said, could you do this for us? And we said yes. It's not very often that you have people physically knocking on your door for business, and that helped. So, and we're still working with BBC and BBC Three, who are just over the road from us. So yeah, location's important. We're in and out of Soho, which is quite an important part for the industry that we're in, and that's 15 minutes on the tube. So it's perfect for us in that regard. So the prospect of not being here is it would be quite disruptive for us.
I mean, we've got a slight story around that as well. I mean, the first piece of business that we actually closed, when we moved into this business, we got through overhearing somebody in the kitchen talking about a project that they were doing, and one of my team heard that and said, that's funny, we can help with that.
Great.
And that turned into a really good piece of business for it.
Great.
So the joy of
serendipity.
Yes, serendipity and cross-pollination, as I like to call it. But no, it's fantastic. It's great to hear. It's been a joy actually to watch you grow.
Oh,
You've been here a long while now.
Yeah, we have.
And one of the very first businesses in actually, and it's been just a joy to see you move from smaller spaces and then now sort of taking over the ground floor next to the Ugly kitchen. But can I ask you, what's your greatest success of your business life so far, do you think?
I think, obviously we're still here. That's really important. I think we started out with big ambitions, and I think we are now in a much better place than we were 5 years ago. We've got a bit of security, and we've got a good plan. Whereas 5 years ago, you didn't know from week to week, day to day sometimes what was going on. So I think the fact that we are a relatively well-known business in our industry, and we're producing content that we can be proud of, I think that's a big success. It's very difficult to pinpoint a single thing, because there's lots of things that come together to build up what we are as a company.
But the message is survival. You're still
it is,
here.
yeah.
You're
It's still
5
here.
years in, your team's
and
growing.
It feels like there's stuff being thrown at you all the time. I'm not going to mention the B word or any of those things, but there's lots of stuff that's constantly being thrown at you, but we're pushing through, and and we've got our own sort of style in which to do that.
Yeah.
So
Brilliant. So let's make the theme, as you're our first ever guest on the webinar series, let's make the theme not the B word, but the bold honesty word.
Okay.
So I'm going to refer back to that. So with bold honesty, what's your greatest business regret? What would you have done differently in hindsight? Is there anything?
There's always stuff. There's an expression, hindsight. There's an expression a friend of mine's get, hindsight is for. How much am I allowed to? Well, anyway, hindsight is for idiots. But so it's always difficult. I do tend to feel like it's good to look forwards rather than look back on stuff. I suppose it would have been good to have started earlier. I think got on with it earlier and be less afraid of what things were to be out there. So maybe, in bold honesty, be a bit bolder earlier. Really would have been the only thing I'd have said, and just I think also not being afraid to say no to some business, actually, because there are some business that, certain business, when you're a small business, you're constantly saying yes because you're like, I need the money, it'd be great, but it'd be nice to be able to have said no earlier and just been a bit more confident then. I'm trying to think of anything else, any specific. There are probably specific projects, but I wouldn't want to go into too much detail.
I think we've all had learning experiences, haven't we?
Yeah.
And the trick with anything like that is to learn from them, is to look back and say, look, that was a complete disaster, or I really wish I hadn't done that.
Yeah.
But at least you don't do it again.
Yes, exactly. And you do always, as you say, you do always learn from them. So even stuff in your hindsight, you're like, I wish I'd never done that project.
Yeah, or taken on that client, because the very first rule of business is don't go bust.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah.
And you have to get through to the next quarter, and you pay the bills and all of those kind of things. And that, for a small business person, is often, I'm sure it's the same for you, is always at the top of mind.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
And then you get to a certain size, and then you've got a certain amount of flexibility in terms of what projects you can take on. And everything else.
Yeah, definitely.
Fantastic. What's your favourite word?
Go. I don't know. I've never thought of that.
Most
That
detested
feels like
word?
an interview. It feels like a proper interview. Most what?
Most detested word.
I suppose it's can't, isn't it, or something like that.
So this is a man of action.
Yeah.
Go, get it, do it earlier, boldness.
Yeah.
But can't. No.
Can't. Yeah. I'm not very good
at that.
No.
Is that do you think that's a telling trait of an entrepreneur?
I suppose so. It's difficult because sometimes you think, what is an entrepreneur? Do I fit that mould? I'm not a Silicon Valley tech titan. I've not come up with an idea that's necessarily going to change the world in the way that certain things have done. But I do think when you are faced with problems and challenges as a small business, you can't let them stop you. You have to keep fighting. That's what I do.
Absolutely.
When we come across stuff, that's difficult. You just keep banging on the door and keep, hammering away, finding different ways of just keeping going. So definitely it is. I don't like to hear about not being able to do stuff.
Good.
So that means the team don't love that.
No, that means you've got to surround yourself with very talented people.
Yes, absolutely.
But also very, the word I'm looking for is very committed people.
Yeah.
And that team's grown now to 15.
Yes, it has, yeah. And we've got a good bunch of people, actually. And, you often think they're taking a big punt on you as someone that's going to come and work for you in a business that they originally didn't know very much about. They're just going to come and give it a go and hope for the best. And they've stuck with us and they've continued to work for us and produce stuff, and we've grown together, which is great.
Fantastic. So if I sat them down here,
yes,
and I said 3 words that sum up Connected Set, what do you think they'd say?
I think they say we're ambitious, we're agile, and we are pioneering. Is that 3?
That's 3.
Pioneering, I suppose, or experimental, something like that. Yeah, we're not afraid to give something else a different go and try stuff out. And we agile in the sense that everyone has to give everything a go. Everyone's got to chip in, roll the sleeves up, and yeah. So we can't find someone that isn't, who's.
Could I ask something on that as well? Because that's quite interesting as a company grows. Maybe the word there was flexibility in those early stages, right? Because when you hire a small team and there's only a few of you, everybody's got to do everything.
Yeah.
Right. As you grow, things tend to become more compartmentalized.
Yeah.
You have particular roles, and that's what you do, and then people slot into that. What kind of stage would you say you're at? At the moment, are you transitioning?
Yeah, I think we are transitioning actually, and I think in the theme of bold honesty, I think that is a challenge for us and it's a challenge for someone like me and Jason and even Tom. When we are growing and we're wanting to be doing more, we need to let certain things go. We're doing that, but then finding people to look after specific, compartments, departments, whatever. Sometimes it's quite challenging. So I think we're transitioning from that sort of micro business to a bit of a more of a small business, I suppose. So that means that there's certain things we still need to be really involved in, which ideally, if we wanted to grow, we have to pull ourselves away.
And it's also difficult for the team.
Yeah.
Because in those early days, everybody is comfortable with doing lots of different things. They've got very diverse work sets.
Yeah.
And then suddenly you've got more people and therefore they can't do that anymore because that's somebody else's job.
Yeah.
So that's quite interesting as companies grow, because you're potentially a different type of person that you're going to be hiring as you
Definitely. I mean, we've been seeing that over the years that we've been here anyway. It has been changing, and it has become easier actually to hire people because you've built up a reputation and you've built up, I suppose people understand there's a lot of people, particularly as we go through projects when we're getting people on freelance, you do build up some reputation, so it has become easier to hire, and we are hiring different people. We're not necessarily just hiring people who have to do everything and understand every part of the business. We are, but it is definitely, it does create tension because you when you're growing, that's what you need to be able to do.
I think there's a common theme. I work a lot with startups, and I work a lot with what I call which is that sort of teenage business.
Yeah.
Sort of 5 years plus, well, maybe 3 to 5 years plus.
Yeah.
I think it's always really interesting how much support there is for startup businesses, people that are just getting off the ground, they're just starting, they're 1 or 2 men, and actually there seems to be a huge sort of plethora of advice and startup support and grants. And then I think there's this sort of slightly barren land of being sort of 3, 5 years, 5 to 10 years, and you really are, that's when the pinch points really happen. That's when you really are pressured to grow and expand, and you need different things, and you need sort of more advice, and actually in a way you're head down and you're just keeping things going. And I think I always find it interesting when I speak to businesses at that stage that they seem more on their own than they've ever been, in a way.
There are times when you're absolutely right. I feel like there are there's more need for advice, and that's when we are, in the last year, we've been engaging specialist advisors more than we've ever done before, in terms of legal and business affairs, those kinds of things, because we've got bigger contracts that require more scrutiny, those kinds of things. And it can be daunting because you're suddenly at the I'm trying to think of the right word, but you're reliant on those specialist advisors. So
it's higher risk as well.
Yeah, there can be. Yeah.
Taking on bigger and
Whereas you're right. When you're a startup, there's everyone's available for advice. Yeah, you're absolutely right. Yeah, so it is an interesting time, and getting and finding those advisors as well. Sometimes we've worked with people that might not have been the best fit, and that's really hard. I mean, we've worked with, in our industry, there is a kind of trade association or industry body called PACT, which is very helpful for businesses of our size, and I'm not sure every business or every sector has something like that, but that's been helpful. But they're not always going to help us with every single thing, because we don't fit their typical model of a production company necessarily. But yeah.
Do you look to are there any other external bodies that you've used or referred to in your time in the last couple of years?
I'm sure there are. I'm trying to think if there have been over the top of my head. I mean, often it would be individual,
looking
individual
more to non-exec and consultants. And there we go. Maybe that's an interesting panel debate we can do on a future webinar, is actually getting everybody together and maybe garnering the knowledge of who is using who at these sort of crucial stages of growth, because it is sharing that knowledge would be really useful.
Yeah.
So using those words, pioneering, ambitious, they're great words. Is it possible for you to look to 3 years? Is that just too far forward, or what's your vision?
Yeah, I mean, I think we do. We are this. We're just about to go into a planning phase, funnily enough, and we will be looking out that far. Probably 3 years is about as far as we can. We've tried to do 5-year plans before, and it becomes really tricky with the business that, of our size. I mean, look back over the last 5 years as to how much we've changed. We've definitely got to a position that is in a much better position, but it's very different to where we thought we would be 5 years ago. I mean, it's quite fun to do those things sometimes, because you think, you're lying out all your ambitions and all that kind of stuff. But I think we're going to be looking out to 3 years, and we've got, we're fortunate in that we've got, certain contracts that are out for the next couple of years, so we can do that to a certain degree.
You've got some foresight. Well, I look forward to hearing that when you've actually done your 3-year plan.
Yeah.
Can I ask, actually related to that, not so much the business but the industry?
Yeah.
Everything is changing so rapidly. Tech is coming on and it's modifying the way that advertising and media is used and consumed. What kind of trends have you, if you're looking back 3 years and then projecting forward a few 3 years, what are you seeing are the big movements
Well,
in
I
your
think
industry at the moment?
in our industry, I think people have wholly underestimated how the uptake of video on demand, essentially, SVOD platforms like Netflix, Amazon, that kind of stuff. I was reading today that it now makes up sort of 20% of your viewing. People are on average spending about 3/4 of an hour watching something on one of those platforms every day. And 5 years ago, there was no penetration of them in the UK at all. And certainly our big suppliers are now quite worried about them. And you are seeing, I think there was a Merrill Lynch analysis of SVOD services in the UK, and that they're going to grow much, much, much faster than anyone ever thought. So that is a really big thing that has changed in the last 5 years. And I think they were underestimated, and I think that's going to have an even bigger impact in the next 5 years.
Do you think there's going to be multiple smaller players coming into that space?
I think there's going to be. I think we're going to go through a phase of fragmentation and then consolidation. I think we're going to see, because in this next year we're seeing loads of new services arriving. Disney is supposed to be launching their individual service. They pulled all their content off Netflix. So I think there will be greater fragmentation, but I think there will follow a lot of consolidation, because people aren't, in the UK, we're not used to spending $5.99 on one service, $5.99 on another, and et cetera. In the States, it's more like that, because they sign up to different cable services and that kind of stuff. But I think even over there, they saw consolidation in that kind of area. But I think what it will be, I suppose the equivalent would be, the way sometimes I look at it, partly because of my work background, is it feels a bit like almost like the magazine market was 20 years ago, when people would subscribe to several different magazines, and video on demand or television like content is kind of going down that route, where it is specialist either by subject matter or specialist by audience. And that's how I see it kind of changing. You are, back in the day, you might have subscribed to a magazine about ships or tennis or something like that. Now you might be doing the same for a specialist TV service, and I think that's possibly the way it'll go. I mean, what's interesting is the likes of Netflix are trying to kind of do that within their own service, so that you will see a different version of Netflix to the version I see.
Do you see that actually spreading out to become more democratic? I mean, we've obviously got the YouTube generation of people publishing their own content. But do you think there's going to be more possibility of people putting their own channels together outside of that?
I think that won't disappear, but I do think what Netflix has done, which has been really good, is it's actually upped the threshold for quality tolerance. Because now, I mean, you hear reviews like I read a review of there's an American Scots film that's out at the moment, and one of the reviews I read, I think it was in Evening Standard, was saying that the battle scenes were vastly underpopulated, because we're so used to seeing, really expensive TV shows like Game of Thrones, where the battle scenes are absolutely huge, So now our tolerance for production quality has actually, has increased. So I think there will be sort of two different areas. There will be an increase in production quality, but some technology will help with all of that. But then on the flip side, there will be a bit more democratization of it. But it feels like people want both. It feels like social media, you want to see quick stuff from your peers or from people that who are influencing you, but you also want to see decent quality stuff as well, which is good. It's encouraging.
With your ambitious nature then, where do you see the opportunities for connected setting amongst all of that?
I think there are loads. I think the thing is, for a producer right now, it's great. A production company is really good, because there are loads of different outlets. It's just now finding out how to, it's prioritising them, which is a challenge in itself. So, there are loads of different SVOD services, there are different platforms that are launching, so that's great. So as the fragmentation happens, there are more opportunities for producers. But there's also opportunity for us to do stuff direct to consumer, and we've got a good level of experience doing that. So I think the challenge for us is prioritising where our efforts should go, and that's really what we need to do in the planning. It's like, where do we need to go? And in terms of our specialisation, we haven't specialised in a genre outside of comedy, animation, factual, that sort of stuff. We're focused on the audience, and we feel like one of the reasons why we focused on that audience is because naturally that's where we've had some success in reaching those audiences, but also it now feels like this is an audience that traditional broadcasters are really struggling to reach. Young, 16 to 34-year-olds is the kind of bracket in which we're focusing on, and it's definitely an area that we know people that we're supplying in Channel 4 are really, really keen on. We're obviously working a lot with BBC 3, which is a BBC channel designed for younger audiences. So, yeah, I think that's where we're aiming to stick. We'll stick there, but we look at delivering it for different people, hopefully.
Okay, great. And so besides the B word, that's the one we're not talking about.
Yes.
In bold honesty, what's the greatest threat or fear that you have moving forwards with great ambition and positivity that I know you have? What keeps you awake at night? Does anything keep you awake at night as a business owner?
It's generally it's generally the micro stuff, isn't it, rather than the big picture stuff that keeps you awake at night, isn't it? You're worrying about the next morning's meeting or something like that. The other stuff is more like the stuff that's great to dream about, isn't it? What's the greatest fear? I mean, it's really hard not to talk about the B word, or maybe we could just lump it into political uncertainty, really, because that is the sort of, those are the things that are challenging. And I suppose that political uncertainty, if you look at the economic uncertainty that stems out of that, for us, we're very reliant on advertising or subscription revenues, and at the moment there's a lot of uncertainty around that, and we're seeing where, I generally am concerned when every day you're hearing about a different retailer going under or a different business closing down or moving jobs and stuff like that. That stuff has a big impact on ultimately our production budgets, because traditional broadcasters rely on advertising revenue. That's coming from those businesses that are now closing down and disappeared. So those are the big things that are worrying.
And very hard to do anything to combat it.
We can't.
It's a stage of inertia.
At the moment, it is just like we're just going to have to carry on in our own little corner, keep doing what we're doing, and making sure that we're delivering. Because ultimately, whilst if ad revenues are going down, therefore production budgets are going down, as long as we're delivering what our clients need us to deliver and the audiences that we're delivering, they're going to still need us, because hopefully the markets will pick up. They will. They always have done in the past. So, we'll be there, keeping going to deliver for them, I suppose.
I don't doubt that for a minute.
The only thing I would say to that is that the UK has always been seen as a stable environment. Whether you talk about housing and external investment coming in or large-scale investments coming in, there's just a feeling at the moment that it is no longer stable. Yeah. And there's this potential for bad things to happen. And that's, for a business, all you want is a stable environment. It's really, really important. Geopolitical things are some things for other people to worry about. Yeah. Right? And when you have to worry about them as a small business, then that gets slightly scary. Yeah. There's nothing you can do about it. You have to carry on doing what you're doing, right? But even the fact that you're thinking about such things is unusual, I think, for a UK operation. And that's why it's slightly scary.
I think you're right, and then if we're going through all those influences, that leads. So we've talked about political, we talked about economic, social stuff. That kind of leads into that, doesn't it? Because when you're having your Prime Minister saying that a second referendum could lead to social unrest, you're like, well, that's something else we might need to have to worry about. But at the moment, I'm just taking all that as just the political jabberings that are going on in background noise at the moment. So
getting on.
Yeah, getting on with it. You just have to get on with it.
Whereas
yeah, exactly. And the sort of final big influence for us is technology, and technology is a positive. That's out of all of those things. That's the thing. We don't see that as a threat. We just see that as enabling us to be able to do stuff, which is the thing that's probably helping us the most, really, at the moment, which is good.
Which is great. Ultimately, in one line, could you say what's your ultimate goal?
For the business would be, I suppose ultimately it would be lovely to be able to do some kind of exit, but I'm nowhere near ready to do that now. It feels like we've got so many ambitions. I suppose the big pipe dream would be great to have some kind of trade sale and go and retire on an island or something like that. But I just can't see me.
Desert island.
I know, exactly. Wouldn't that be amazing? But I said I've got big ambitions. But But yeah, I mean, for now, I feel like there's so much to be doing and getting on with and that kind of stuff. And some of those opportunities, you just don't know where they're around the corner. Some of the stuff we're doing with our comedy and animation channel, MASH, there's loads of really interesting opportunities that we could pursue with that, that are really fascinating, that we'd love to be able to do more with. And I'm certainly not ready to do that at the moment. But, eventually, I would like to spend some time in an island. I don't think I'd spend much time there because I'd get a little bit.
I imagine you get quite
frustrated. Yeah. I think I'd want to get back and do something else. But I'd love to be able to give it a go for a bit.
It's very high powered, or it tends to be quite pressured and worrisome as a business owner. Are you still enjoying it?
I do, yeah, I do. I mean, it's funny. At the times that I find it toughest, if I'm being bold and honest about it, it's normally just before Christmas because absolutely everything is going crazy at that time. And then you have that break, and then you come back. Generally come back in January,
breathing
fighting
aside,
fit.
really.
Yeah, exactly. You're like, yeah, I'm brilliant. Right, I'm ready to go for
still
it.
Here.
But at Christmas, it's just like it's a crunch point, isn't it? So I remember thinking probably this time last month I was just thinking, oh, I'm just exhausted. But I don't think that's unusual. So sometimes that's the time when you're really having to kick yourself a bit. But yeah, I do still enjoy it. Yeah, I do. And I think we're lucky because we're quite, I enjoy, being a part of the team and having a great team. I feel like I enjoy the company of our team and working and meeting lots of different people. So
Clwyd,
that's
do you
what makes
find
it.
Christmas the cruncher?
Actually, I just work through Christmas. It was fine. No, it's for us. It's less seasonal. We don't have projects sort of like that. Christmas for us, strangely for work, is a good time to get things done.
Yeah.
I do a lot of planning and it's a quiet time.
Yeah.
So I tend to think. I read a lot of business books. I lock myself away, do training and do stuff like that. It's just a really good reset for the rest of the year.
Time to work on the business when nobody else is ringing you and hassling you.
I do try and do that, but Christmas time is, actually the first week of January is people are not back yet.
That's amazing that week.
Get so much done.
You can, and I really enjoy that. I do try to take time out as well to work on the business, but that's a particular point. Yeah.
So the idea of this series is to wonderfully get inside the minds of people like yourselves, which has been great to get to know you more today, or to share some of that thinking. I think it'd be fantastic to get you involved in some panel discussions moving forwards, which would be amazing. I think if there was one bit of bold, honest advice that you'd give other businesses to survive and thrive, that's what I'd like to hear from both of you. What would you say if somebody was starting out now, like you were 5 years ago, and Clwyd, how long ago?
2011 is when we started, so we've been going a little while.
So there we go. So rewind to that point. What bit of bold, honest survival business line would you love to hear from somebody? What would you share?
Well, from me, I mean, I've been asked this before. I think probably it would be something very, very basic like cash flow. It's so easy just to lose focus from that. Absolutely. And to lose track of that. And somebody gave me a piece of advice a while ago which was quite good about that, and he said, make sure you've got enough money in the bank to actually pay for like 3 months of everything, your wages, your rent, your all of the services and everything else. If you had no more money coming in for 3 months, could you survive with cash in the bank? And that gives you like a treasure chest, so you're not like, it doesn't sound like much, but if you add it up and your expenses, it can be quite a lot to just have sitting there doing nothing.
And significantly enough to do something with.
Because the danger of that is, if you've got X thousand sitting in that bank, I could do a lot with that, right? I could run a campaign, I could grow, I could hire somebody, I could do. So the danger is that you spend it. I love to spend money when I've got it, right? Because I think of all the things I can do with it. So I think I would be slightly more cautious and a bit more protective of the business early on, to put those financial safeguards in place, because people they get really enthusiastic about doing all the stuff they're going to do, and they don't think financially, they don't think of all those different hats they have to wear when they start a business.
So there we go. In a time machine, Clwyd would put some more financial rigour in place. What about you, Jake?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's very sensible advice. I'm thinking about a piece of advice, or it's more of a little phrase that I remember hearing. Do you remember Hilary Devey? Did you ever watch Dragon's Den? It just reminded me of it.
In the early days.
Yeah. She said, her phrase was, I'll see if I get this right, turnover's vanity, profit's sanity, cash is reality. Yeah. So, which is something that I've stuck in my head, because it's always, cash flow's always been the thing for us. It's always been the thing that I've spent more time on than anything else in terms of where we're at and how long we're going to last. So yeah, I mean, I think that's definitely a good piece of advice. I'm trying to think if there's what I would say to ourselves 5 years ago, or to anyone else starting up. I mean, I think you do have to do quite a bit of planning, and you do have to test your concept or what you're going to do quite rigorously, which kind of goes a little bit away from the boldness, but you do have to see whether it's a decent idea, and not be afraid to hear some honest advice. I think I remember we had a really good mentor. I think that would be another thing to suggest, would be get someone who's done this before and try and pick their brains. And that was quite transformative for us, because we got someone who basically went through our books, went through our business plan, and picked it to pieces, and said, and asked us the questions. And when I said at the beginning, when we first started, we weren't paying ourselves, he would say, well, what on earth are you not doing that? Why on earth are you not doing that? That kind of stuff. And to get someone to be really grumpy and
find a grumpy person. I like that.
And have a go at you,
Absolutely.
basically. Yeah,
Absolutely.
But it was great. Someone just external to scrutinise what you're doing, I think, is good.
I've been very fortunate to mentor a lot of young people in business, and actually I've always been astounded by the amount of people that have come back when you say, are you doing the due diligence? Do you know that it's marketable? What you're delivering is a great idea. So many people, yep, my mum loves it. My auntie, she says it's great. My boyfriend, now he really thinks it's a fantastic idea, which of course they're not going to tell you it's rubbish.
No,
they love you.
Yeah,
they're behind you. They support you. But that real rigour and that real ability to go out and let somebody pull it apart, actually, and to give you that real objective, really fantastic quality advice is really, I think both your points are hugely important, and I think that's essential, absolutely essential. Make sure that you're ready for market, and a group of friends can be a group of candid friends who aren't going to offend your it's my life dream and I've built it up, and how could you possibly say that? But that's what you need, don't you?
And I think one of the things I've found is to find somebody who has no skin in the game, as it were.
Absolutely.
But potentially on the same sort of level. So find somebody else who's also running a business, and mentor him, and he can mentor you, vice versa. And then you do get this honest feedback. And also, entrepreneurship can be a lonely thing, because you have a team, and the team respect you and report to you, but they don't often criticize you. And it's very difficult to get them to do that, in a safe
You're
way,
the boss.
right? Yeah. So to have somebody who you can just talk to and say, well, that's a stupid idea, and then you argue it through, and maybe it is and maybe it isn't. So that's kind of, I've found a number of people to work with over the years, and that's really been very, very powerful, very useful.
Fantastic. Well, we've been in our time machine. We've been back. We're now going to go forward. It's been an absolute joy. I think we're doing our little bit to try and keep that cash flow in check.
Absolutely.
Great.
UGLI is supporting now 60 businesses or plus like yourselves. It's a joy for us to understand a little bit more of the workings of those businesses. We're going to continue to do this and find out if there are any more nuggets, gems of knowledge to share. But hopefully we'll be speaking to you again, and it's been an absolute pleasure. Have you got anything else you'd like to add, Clwyd?
Really enjoyed it.
No, thanks very much for asking me. It's been great.
Cheers. Thank you.